don't get it. I don't understand why. I'm Stephanie McMahon. I'm a lady. But you know, I guess when I think about it, all your comments on the internet, the way you respond to me in the audience, I guess you've been telling me for a long time that you just don't like me. And I can understand why, because you're jealous. I have everything, and you have nothing. All the women are jealous because of my incredible good looks, my great body, the fact that I have the brains to back it up, and the fact that I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I didn't have to work for any of it. And the men? Well, all of you men are simply intimidated. You're intimidated by the fact that I have more money than every man in this arena combined. Men are also intimidated by my beauty. But most of all, men are intimidated by the fact that I have bigger balls than every man in this arena.
I can't let it slide.
Welcome to 3-Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade, and today we're going to hit some notes of the fallout from the $3 million hush money scandal, which now includes Stephanie McMahon being named the interim CEO of WWE. From undesirable to undeniable, Stephanie McMahon goes from being forced out of the company to coming back with the power of Thor himself. What a week this has been. So let's start with Stephanie, because that's the big story. Everybody was asking the question for 20 some odd years, who was going to take over if Vince was gone? Now we've got the answer to that question, and the answer is Stephanie McMahon. So from June 17th, 2022, a joint release between WWE and its board of directors. It says, independent directors continue review of alleged executive misconduct. Stephanie McMahon named interim CEO and interim chairwoman. WWE and the board of directors today announced that a special committee of the board is conducting an investigation into alleged misconduct by its chairman and CEO, Vincent McMahon, and John Laurinaitis, head of talent relations, and that effective immediately, McMahon has voluntarily stepped back from his responsibilities as CEO and chairman of the board until the conclusion of the investigation. McMahon will retain his role and responsibilities related to WWE's creative content during this period and remains committed to cooperating with the review underway. The special committee has appointed Stephanie McMahon to serve as interim CEO and interim chairwoman. I have pledged my complete cooperation to the investigation by the special committee, and I will do everything possible to support the investigation. I have pledged to accept the findings and outcome of the investigation, whatever they are, said Mr. McMahon. I love this company and am committed to working with the independent directors to strengthen our culture and our company. It is extremely important to me that we have a safe and collaborative workplace. I have committed to doing everything in my power to help the special committee complete its work, including marshaling the cooperation of the entire company to assist in the completion of the investigation and implement its findings, said Mrs. McMahon. WWE and its board of directors take all alleged allegations of misconduct very seriously. The independent directors of the board engaged independent legal counsel to assist them with the independent review. In addition, the special committee and WWE will work with this independent third party to conduct a comprehensive review of the company's compliance program, HR functions, and overall culture. The company and the board do not expect to have any further comment until the investigation is concluded. All right, so Vince will still be running creative, while Stephanie will be running the nuts and bolts of WWE corporate. Sounds about right, and it makes a lot of sense. I said in my review that people don't really know Vince, and that he doesn't really just give up these sorts of things, and this is not Vince giving up. This is him passing the ball to Stephanie for a short amount of time, into which he can be either cleared or convicted, and then he's just going to get it right back. But this is just, common as far as people who are under investigation. You can't be the chairman of the board and be under investigation by the board. It just doesn't make much sense. So this should have been expected. I don't know why I didn't see it coming, but I woke up this morning absolutely laughing my ass off at this whole thing. But this is a pretty simple transition of power. The board voted for Stephanie to be the new CEO, and there it is. You know, she won't be, I doubt she's going to be in the seat long enough to screw anything up. But it looks nice on her resume. It's going to look great on her resume. For a company, it's important to maintain institutional knowledge. So Stephanie has been in the company for her entire life. She knows the corporate culture inside and out. She knows all of the people. She probably knows when they were hired and everything. She knows what WWE is, what it's supposed to be doing. All that stuff is important. It's not somebody who's going to come in and try to be a gunslinger and start doing their own thing. It's somebody who's going to come in and maintain what Vince has been doing for however long it's going to be. And I don't see it being more than 6 months. You know, I don't think it should take that long to investigate this stuff, depending on how many accusations and, you know, how many documents they have to go through. But I don't see it being that long of a process. So Stephanie is now in the chair. And a lot of wrestling fans thought they were going to get rid of Kevin Dunn. We got to talk about this because this was one of the most asinine things that popped up on the internet. Bodyslam.net and WrestleNomics. WrestleNomics were talking about the unusual amount of stock that was trading on the day that Vince McMahon was announced as being under investigation. It was like 2.1 million shares of WWE stock was being moved back and forth. So people went back into the archives, saw that Kevin Dunn was moving around about 15,000 shares of WWE stock out of his 270 some odd thousand shares that he owns. He moved around about 15,000. He sold them back in May of 2022. He made about $1 million. Then he was accused by the dirt sheets of insider trading, saying that he was on the board. He knew that the board was investigating Vince McMahon, and he was trading, knowing that the investigation was underway. The investigation began in April. The board would have been told around that same time, and they were still investigating in May when he sold his stock. There was only one problem. Kevin Dunn was not on the board. And Bodyslam.net, to their credit, I'll give them some credit, they retracted the story. Now, the retraction of the story did not go nearly as far as the initial allegation of the story. They put out there that Kevin Dunn had insider traded. That got all the clicks. That is what everybody saw. Nobody saw the retraction. That's why you cannot do this stuff. You know, but it had a lot of people thinking that, oh, the entire empire is falling down. They got Kevin Dunn too. I'm like, well, of all of them, I would have been probably most excited to see Kevin Dunn take the L. But, you know, he managed to dodge the bullet because, well, even if he was insider trading, he probably still knew that Vince was under investigation. Just because he's not on the board doesn't mean he doesn't know. You know, he's been working with the family for 40 years or something like that. Of course, he likely knew. But you also take into account that he has $18 million of stock, and he only sold $1 million of it, 15,000 shares of over 200,000 shares that he owns. That's not a lot of money, you know. And then you look at the stock, I believe, in May, and then compare it to now. I think the stock has actually gone up since May. So he could have held out until it went public and then sold, because then you would expect the price to drop, which didn't occur. But, you know, there's that. But also, this is the third thing. WWE's board is also being investigated. But we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail, because the Scott & Scott organization, or the Scott & Scott law firm, wants to investigate WWE's board. Let's get into this. So this is from Business Wire. It says, Scott & Scott, a national securities and consumer rights litigation firm, is investigating whether certain directors and officers of World Wrestling Entertainment breached their fiduciary duties to WWE and its shareholders. If you are a WWE shareholder, you are encouraged to contact attorney Joe Pettigrew for additional information. Scott & Scott is investigating whether members of WWE's board or senior management failed to manage WWE in an acceptable manner, in breach of their fiduciary duties to WWE, and whether WWE and its shareholders have suffered damages as a result. On June 15th, 2022, the Wall Street Journal reported that the WWE board was investigating an alleged $3 million settlement that CEO Vince McMahon agreed to pay in January 2022 to a former WWE employee with whom he allegedly had an affair. All right, then it goes into what this is. Now, for those of you who don't know what fiduciary duties are, essentially what it is are you acting in a way that is for the better of the company or for the better of yourself? That's what your fiduciary duty is as the board of directors or the CEO of a company. You have to act on behalf of the company. So they want to investigate whether WWE's board has been acting in the best interest of shareholders or in the best interest of themselves. Now, there's a lot of different ways to look at that and how to come to that conclusion. I did some things. For starters, I looked into what Scott & Scott is. And what I found was this is kind of just an ambulance chasing organization. You want my proof? Here it is. Intuit investigation reminder. Scott & Scott attorneys at law continue to investigate Intuit directors and officers for breach of fiduciary duties. Then it says Scott & Scott, a national security consumer rights litigation firm, is continuing its investigation whether certain directors and officers of Intuit breached their fiduciary duties to Intuit and its shareholders. If you are an Intuit shareholder, you are encouraged to contact attorney Joe Pettigrew. Scott & Scott is investigating whether members of Intuit's board of directors or senior management failed to manage Intuit in an acceptable manner in breach of their fiduciary duties to Intuit, and whether Intuit and its shareholders have suffered damages as a result. In other words, it's the exact same release with just words changed. These people send out this stuff every time something hits Wall Street Journal or something like that. Intuit had been involved with a lawsuit with the Federal Trade Commission. Therefore, this was in March of 2022. So therefore, this company is basically an ambulance chaser. They're basically soliciting to see if anybody wants to try to investigate WWE. You know, and I know a lot of wrestling journalists, they didn't take that next step. You could just put in Scott & Scott and you could see a lot of their other situations where they're still trying to look into other companies. So this is kind of what they do. Wells Fargo investigation. Let's see. Scott & Scott, a national securities and consumer rights litigation firm, continues to investigate whether certain directors and officers of Wells Fargo and company breached their fiduciary duties to Wells Fargo and its shareholders. Scott & Scott is investigating whether members of Wells Fargo's board or directors or senior management failed to manage Wells Fargo in an acceptable manner in breach of their fiduciary duties to Wells Fargo, and whether Wells Fargo and its shareholders have suffered damages as a result. This was after Wells Fargo was hit with a class action lawsuit in April 2022. So these are ambulance chasers, and the dirt sheets will have you to believe that this is legitimate because they just reprinted what these people put out on Business Wire. There that is. So over the last couple of days, after Vince McMahon got blasted with, publicly for, being who he is, there's been a lot of people trying to use that name to get a lot of fame and attention and make money. Scott & Scott is no real difference. Now, I'm not saying that Scott & Scott is wrong for being ambulance chasers. There very well could be something there. There could very well be something to all of these investigations. But it's a solicitation. It is not an announcement that there is an investigation. It is, hey, if you would like to investigate because you are a shareholder of this company, here's who you can contact where we will look into it for you. Of course, for an exorbitant fee. Now, if you were going to look into whether WWE has been making decisions that does not benefit the shareholder, but has been benefiting the McMahon family or the individual board members, that's perfectly fine. And I think that those investigations should be pretty regular. But here's what you have to think about. WWE stock, as of closing on June 16th, 2022, $64.87. It had gone down 3.44%. So Vince McMahon, it was announced that Vince was under investigation. The stock went down 3.4%. Previous year, meaning June 17th, 2021, the stock was at $58.27. So if you invested in WWE in 2021, you bought a bunch of shares of stock, your stock price went up in a year. Therefore, it's going to be hard to argue that they're screwing over shareholders. Furthermore, to take to the next step, if you were going to investigate that, something else has gone wrong, let's open up the books. As of May 2022, their investor call in May, it said operating income was up 42% over May 2021, and their revenue was up 27% over 2021, May 2021. Now, if you go back to April, the documents in April, these are public documents. You can just go to the website and download them and look at the charts and everything, okay? And so I'm not doing anything that's kind of really over the top. So April 2021, they put out their, I think, first quarter earnings. Operating income was up 22% over 2020. And their revenue was down 90%, but that was due to no live events. So if you were an investor in WWE, where would you be looking at for your being the lack of fiduciary responsibility? Where would you be looking? It's not in the stock price. Stock price has gone up. It wouldn't be in revenues. Revenues have gone up. Would it be in, sponsorships? That would be the only thing that you would be looking at, but you have to try to figure out why that is. Now, a big interesting one would be if somebody came along and said, we're willing to pay 3 times what WWE stock is worth in order to buy the company. And then Vince McMahon said no. That would be something that would probably be in violation of his fiduciary duties. If somebody came along and offered 3 or 4 times what a stock is worth to buy the entire company, then yes, that would be in violation of their fiduciary duties. This is what Elon Musk did to Twitter, right? He went in there and looked at their stock price, offered more than what the stock is worth. So the company had a fiduciary duty to sell it to him via the shareholders. The shareholders are like, wait a minute, that's our money. Give us our money. But if nobody's coming along trying to pay 2 to 3 times what the shareholders would have made, the likelihood that they're in any type of violation of their fiduciary duties is not likely. Now, feel free to look, it doesn't hurt to look, but I'm just putting things in perspective for, people who listen to what I'm saying here. Again, I'm just a guy on YouTube. I have no special training, no special, especially not on like the stock market or anything like that. I have no special training in that. I just know how to do research. I just know what to look for, and I just know I smell things like that Scott and Scott stuff. I just smelled it wrong. I just read it and was like, this seems like a pamphlet that you would see on, get in the mail that you didn't ask for. And it will also comes across like something you would see on the news. Like if you were injured by some drug taken by Johnson & Johnson, contact yada, yada, yada. And they lead you to believe that something is already occurring, but they're really trying to fish and find clients. And it is what it is. So this has been the entire slate of the McMahon family drama. Stephanie is now the boss. Kevin Dunn was not insider trading. It was even the people who said he was insider trading now have to admit that he wasn't. Now, that doesn't mean that the 2.1 million shares of WWE stock that were moved around might not still be, especially considering, and this was a good point by WrestleNomics, that it typically moves at about 600,000 a day. So it was an anomaly that so much stock was moving around that one particular day. But it shouldn't have been an anomaly considering the CEO was outed as having non-disclosure agreements for having sex with his employees. It's like, sure, that would lead to a lot of buying and selling and trading of stock. Yes, absolutely. Because some people are probably going to expect, especially if you know WWE, one of their risk factors, and it's been in pretty much every investor call and investor presentation, that one of their risk factors if anything happened to Vince, if he was to die, if he was to get trapped up in some type of scandal. That was a risk factor for WWE because he has so much control over the company, and including the creative portion. Then that would be a major risk factor. So you would expect a lot of people to react to a story about Vince McMahon. So Stephanie McMahon being put in a position is likely due just to maintain power, not just for Vince, but maintain a front for the board, because Stephanie is already on the board. Institutional knowledge, she already knows how things work. And because she's already familiar to the investors. You know, she's already been working with a lot of the sponsors, and she's been doing this stuff already. So it's kind of like, and this was very odd too, people are saying it's going to be business as usual for WWE. It's like, it's been going on for 2 months and nobody knew anything. Of course it's business as usual. And guess what? Stephanie being in the seat, business as usual. She's not going to go in there and tinker with anything and try to change anything. Not unless she absolutely has to. And then if she does, she's got everybody else around her who probably already knows what's going on and what should happen. She's going to have the same advisors that Vince had. You know? So this whole thing is entertaining. It's interesting. But, I mean, Stephanie's the boss. That's great. I think that's hilarious. Because now we're going to see all the CM Punk pipe bomb clips floating all over the place. And we answered the question, who was going to be in control if something was to happen to Vince? The answer is Stephanie. So, how do you love that? Like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.